In this video, I want to go ahead and show off a plugin that I've been working on, which is going to be kind of a one-stop shop for your FPS characters. So this will obviously work in first person and third person. However, this is supposed to kind of take everything that you need and compile it into one just group of classes. So we have firearms that have dynamic recoil. Aiming is controlled through IK as well, so we can switch between however many optics we want and place them wherever we want, and same thing goes with iron sights. We have weapon sway for rotation, some set up for location and movement. I do not have anything set up for actual like walking, so that's to come because obviously this is very early on, as well as we have procedural recoil. And everything is influenced by weapon parts. So what I mean by that is if we take a look at the gun currently, we have a suppressor, we have a barrel, we have 3 red dots, and a rear iron sight. The front sight I just have up here and it's fixed. So what we can do is we can look at all these, and for example, the base rifle has no barrel, just the front sight post, is 3.7 pounds. We have ergonomics. This affects the aim down sight speed. We have the recoil, vertical and horizontal. Now, first off, let's talk about aiming down sights. So this, as I showed off in my tutorial series, gets affected, well, not in my series, but currently in this project, it gets affected by the weight of the gun as well as the ergonomics. Now, the weight of the gun changes, and the ergonomics will too in the future once I start incorporating other types of attachments. That gets affected by the attachments. So the suppressor, as you can see here, adds 1.6 pounds. This barrel adds 1.5 pounds. I obviously need to do some tweaking. And then if we go back over to, like, for example, this reflex sight, this adds 1 pound. And this rear sight, again, just have it at the default of 1 pound. So we're taking a 3.7 pound rifle. When we add all the attachments to it, we end up at 14.7 for the weight. So obviously that's a pretty hefty rifle. So when it comes down to aim down sight speed, you want high ergonomics and low weight, similar to that of Escape from Tarkov. So here you can see the speed currently. And let me go ahead and I'll just do some things like I'll remove all of the optics except for the iron sight in the back. And I will remove the suppressor as well. So now we're at 6.2 pounds. So if I aim now, it is a good bit faster. So we now have a lot faster aiming. And let's say I go through and I add a forward grip. Well, that would end up modifying the ergonomics. Again, this will be code controlled by the attachment itself by percentage. So this will bump the ergonomics up to, let's say we had a stock and a vertical grip. Let's say we bump it up to, 80. Well, we'll go to aim on sights now. It's really fast. Now, while we're on this subject, that also affects your weapon sway. So for example, if I look left and right, there's not really all that much there. And same thing, we have minimal lean as we move and all that kind of stuff. So it really helps out there and it keeps it in line. If we go over and let me revert the ergonomics back to 50, we add the suppressor back, as well as we add all the optics back. So now we're back at that 14-pound rifle. So here's the weapon sway with that. As you can see, it is a lot worse. So it's all a balancing game of, well, in the game anyways, of how much weight you want on the gun for the attachment you get. Again, similar to that of Escape from Tarkov, which is kind of what I'm building this around, to have a very similar style, because that's what I personally like. And it's made it so everything has been easily tunable between parts. It's just kind of plug and play. So now that we have that, let's talk about recoil. So right now I have a basic projectile. It's set up to be equivalent to that of M193, so 3,200 feet per second at 55 grains. And let's spray into the wall. So that's our spray pattern with a 14.7 pound rifle using, well, firing 5.56. Now, if we, again, let's just go ahead and remove the optics because that right there should be a decent bit of weight. So this brings it down to 8.7 pounds. As you can see, the spray pattern has opened up because we've lightened up the weight of the rifle. Now let's go over to our suppressor here. And as you can see, we can reduce the weight of the suppressor, and that would increase the recoil of the rifle. Same thing if we, wanted to have a lightweight or short barrel, we would reduce the weight of that, and that would also increase the recoil of the rifle. Now, as you see here, we have the recoil reduction percentage of the suppressor, or just the muzzle devices in general, that we can change with. So if I set this to 0, it's doing nothing to help the recoil. So we end up with this. So this will be no muzzle device, just kind of as is, with a 8.7 pound rifle. Again, with a suppressor. So let me actually zero out the suppressor weight real quick. So actually I could just get rid of it. We have a 6.2 pound rifle. That's the recoil pattern. As you can see, it's pretty aggressive. We go through, we add the suppressor back up. So we now have a suppressor again. And let's say let's say this is more of a muzzle device. So we're going to bump the weight down to 9 pounds. And we will give this a recoil reduction of something along the lines of 40. So here's the spray pattern. As you can see, that tightened up a lot. And we still have pretty decent aim down sight speed as well. So that would be a good balance. And if I wanted to, let's just say I wanted to only have one of the optics on here. So we're adding a little bit more weight. So we still have decent aim down sight speed, but that little bit of weight also helps with the recoil. So I could do something like I could stack these. I could have a really strong forward grip for, I don't know what I would put the stats at. I haven't tried to tinker with it yet. So let's say that adds up to, we'll do 90% recoil reduction. And if we wanted to go through and just add the remaining optics back, so now we're at full weight. As you can see, the gun's quite heavy, but here's the recoil. It is extremely controllable, and you have a very tight pattern. You just have a little bit of that initial climb. And you have very good control over everything because the gun's not jumping around all that much. So that's how the recoil system works. Again, just a quick run through. It's all dictated mostly, by the weight. The weight has in my opinion, the biggest influence. Then after that comes the initial, obviously you have the recoil settings, but assuming you have these set in stone for a specific type of firearm, you control the weight. You would go through the weight of all the attachments that you add on, plays a big influence on it. And then obviously your recoil reduction. So whatever muzzle device you have on the end, that recoil reduction percent plays a big role as well. So certain muzzle devices obviously are going to reduce more. I'm not sure if I want to have this be split to vertical and horizontal. I may in the future, but as of right now, I'm just going to kind of leave it, but it's set up to where I can do that quite easily. And same thing goes, the projectile affects the recoil as well. So if you're firing, let's say we bump this to like a 308, which I think is 2,800 at like 147 grains, something like that. Here's our recoil. So we have that compared to 5.56, which is a much tighter group. So yeah, there's not really much else to show at the moment. I do plan on showing, oh yeah, one more thing. We also have it set up, well, I don't know why I'm saying we, I have it set up to where you have complete rifles as well. So if you wanted to just ignore all of the separate weapon parts and just have a simple firearm, you can do so. So basically what you would have is obviously you have your default projectile class, which you would want to set. You would set the weight in pounds, your ergonomics, your vertical recoil and horizontal and all that kind of stuff. And from there, let me go ahead and switch over to it. Be the complete. So you just have the base values, and you can still obviously add optics wherever you want, but you don't really have the muzzle devices or anything like that, just to keep it simple if that's the route you wanted to take. But everything aim-wise still works the same. Now, here's the plans for the nearby future. I want to have, for the optics anyways, and I guess iron sights, make it so you can control the distance away from the optic just very easily inside a blueprint. because currently this is driven by C++, and I have it set so the distance is always going to be the same between each optic. So, when you switch over to this one, it's not going to be going, it's not going to bring the gun very close to your face. But I want to make it so you can choose how far away you want to kind of be the optics. So certain ones you would be a little bit closer, other ones you would be a little bit farther. So when I go and add things like actual like high magnified optics, and you have scope, eventually scope shadow, I want that to all kind of be, coming into play. So that way you can really fine tune and adjust everything that way. Now this is also, everything is replicated, including recoil. So if I play with two clients, I'll just do a listen server for showing you. Looks a little wonky to do the setup, but as you can see, I aim down the sights. That's all replicated. I can switch like so, and it's all replicates through IK. And same thing. The only thing I'm not replicating is I don't want to replicate the sway, as that's not needed. You're not going to notice that on other people's clients, but we have the recoil. So it's very subtle for other clients, as you can tell. So I was thinking probably go through and amplify it just a little bit for other clients to visually see. And the aiming is a little bit different as well. So what I'm doing is, it's very hard to see because I have a first person mesh right here that you're looking at. But when I go to aim, if I didn't do this, it would be in the exact center. So if we look at the bottom right screen on the server window, the gun would be in the exact center between my shoulders. So it would be kind of in the middle of your chest for the third person mesh. What I'm doing is I'm offsetting the location. So when you aim on other clients, it moves over to the right shoulder. So whenever you aim, it goes to the right shoulder and not the center of your chest. And another thing I'm going to have to go through and do is set up a offset for where you want the stock position. So that way you can adjust kind of, if you have certain stocks, you can change how far the gun gets pulled in for the third person character. So that's the other thing that I want to go through and do. But for now, I'd say this is a pretty solid setup, especially considering everything's code driven, because if we look at the animation graph, that's what we have inside of it. I'm eventually going to have to clean this up, but the event graph is empty because everything's driven through our code here. So it's set up to be event driven. So that way, nothing really that's not needed is not going, well, isn't going to, something that's not needed is not going to be running on tick. I want to try to make this as efficient as possible. So that's why I obviously left out things like weapon sway for other clients to be able to visually see, because that's something you're not going to notice. And that's something that would run on every tick whenever you turn or start moving. So there's just little things like that I'm trying to do to save performance there. Plans for the nearby future are probably going to be the actual weapon attachments themselves, such as forward grips. I might try to set up pistol grips and stocks. I'm going to have to eventually model one, I guess. And I want those to, just like the suppressor does, I want those, wrong one, to have a recoil reduction. So your forward grip has a recoil reduction. Your stock has a recoil reduction. Your pistol grip has a extremely minor one, but I want all of those to as well contribute to the ergonomics. So I want it to boost the ergonomics, so that way when you start adding, higher tier attachments, your aim down sight speed will increase to follow. Again, depending on the attachment you're using. That's probably going to be the main one. I also really need to set up some sort of magazine system, as I'm not entirely sure how I want to do it. I kind of want to make it optional to where you can have Call of Duty style ammo. So by that way, you just have this, finite supply. So let's say we have 180 rounds on our player, and you can just kind of reload and it'll slowly deteriorate through those, or have actual magazines. So that way you can reload, you can drop a magazine, all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of contemplating. I may end up just pushing that off later down the road, so I can get this out and people can start kind of tinkering with it, finding any issues that they may have. so I can fix them, because in my opinion, I'd rather have this be nice, set up, and stable, and performing really good, than having some extra flashy features that, you know, that might have some problems, or just other base features that might have some problems. So just some quality changes of life, or quality improvements of life, that I would like to do to really improve upon the system. So that's going to be it for this video. I think that covers pretty much everything. We have a couple different classes here. So we have the FPS template animation instance, and here we have just some base settings inside of it. So we have the aim interpolation speed, cycle sights, cycle sights interpolation. So that is another thing that is controlled by weight that I forgot to mention. So if I aim down sights and I switch through each optic, let's say I bump up, screw it, I'll just use this for now. Let's say I bump this up to a really heavy gun. So we're at 21 pounds, super slow aim down sight speed, and slow weapon switching speed. And let's say I bump this down to, I'll do 3 pounds. Let me just disable the optics spawning real quick. And I'll go ahead and just get rid of the muzzle device as well. Now I have a 5-pound rifle. Ah, crap, I need the optics. I forgot about that. I have an 8-pound rifle. I can aim. And as you can see, my sight switching speed is faster. I don't remember if I set the ergonomics to influence this as well. Let me try that real quick. So now we should have real fast aiming, which we do. Yeah, so ergonomics also affects your sight switching speed as well. So this also controls it. So if we bump this up to like 40, as you can see, it's a little bit faster and that kind of stuff. So it's just like little multipliers. So this should be absurdly fast, which obviously it is. So this is kind of where you would set your base inside of the animation instance. Same thing for your rotation lag and motion lag. And those are kind of the weapon weight. So as I turn, the gun lagging behind as if it's simulating weight. So the only classes we have are a animation instance, an example animation blueprint, which mostly you would just use to copy and paste what is inside of the animation graph. You obviously have an example character, which for now I just have it set to handle full auto fire. This just prints out the weight when you press F, nothing more. I want to move the spawning of the weapon inside of here, so it's no longer done in C++ for ease of, I guess, other users. And they can also spawn it in C++ if they wish. And then we have all of our blueprints so far. So we have a rear sight, which is just the rear iron sight. Nothing, fancy. Just took about 30 minutes or 30 seconds in Blender. We have the reflex sight. We have a suppressor. We have a barrel. We have a complete rifle, and we have a parts rifle. So the parts rifle, again, takes miscellaneous parts like suppressors, barrels, and all that kind of stuff. The complete rifle doesn't take anything except for extras. So, for example, it might take, well, in this case, it pretend it has a stock on it. So we could add optics, we could add forward grips, and those would affect the weight and ergonomics accordingly, but nothing else. So it's just like a base rifle. Well, I believe that's pretty much everything. I've drawn this out to about 19 minutes now of just trying to explain the features, because this has been kind of a decent, well, pretty big undertaking for me anyways, to kind of get set up. But hopefully in the near future you guys will get to enjoy it, as I plan on selling it on the marketplace and not too long. Once I get kind of the base stuff set in, I obviously need to have some sort of reloading mechanic in the place, which means I have to make a crappy reload animation, which is gonna suck because I'm the one making it. So that's gonna be all for this video. If you have any features that you believe should be in this, feel free to comment down below or join and just message through my Discord, and I'll check it out and see if that's something I will implement, because I want to make this kind of the ultimate FPS character system that you can just purchase, plug and play, and have essentially just an Escape from Tarkov style experience right from the get-go in terms of your character and gunplay. to where the only thing you have to do is just add in some models and tinker with some values and you're done. So again, that's going to be all for now. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon down in the description below, where I have a Team Deathmatch tutorial series just for Patrons, as well as early access to pretty much all of my videos. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to pop in my Discord as we're nearing 400 members and I'll try to help you out. So I'll see you in the next video.